Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start first by thanking the organizers, AFA. I'm pleased to come back. I was in last meeting in Dubai, and some of my slides, I tried to change them not to say the same story twice. So hopefully those of you who were in that meeting will bear with me. So we can get the slides, we can get started, and I'll try to keep it to 20 minutes as planned in the agenda. So please, can we put the slides on? Okay, so that's the title of the presentation is about challenges, and it's going to be a very quick story, basically trying to summarize a lot of things in a very short way. So that's the content. So basically setting the background and then talking about the issues of soil fertility and fertilizer use in the region, the Near East and North Africa, which also the title was the Arab world, but it's more or less the same. Looking at some of the key risks and challenges, and then I will give a very short summary of what FAO is doing about this, the Food and Agriculture Organization in the region and also globally. And finally, looking at some of the approaches, trying to keep the good news to the end, basically, solutions and approaches. And that's, okay. So this is the region. It spans basically over 14% of the land Earth surface and hosts 10% of its population. It's mostly arid and semi-arid. As you know, it's about more than 85% is desert. So that sets the background and geography. But still, agriculture is really an important source of income for many countries in the region. Of course, it's variable. If we look at North Africa, or the Near East, or the GCC, there are different pictures. But the overall picture is also shrinking natural resources. As we know, water is already scarce and it's getting scarcer with the change in climate. The geopolitical instability, as you know, in the region also adds to the problem. And of course, the cherry on the cake, as we say, is the climate. This is one of the hotspots of climate change, as is now most of the studies show. And that results in a huge yield gap. Just to give you a very quick snapshot of what the yields look like. This is a historic graph showing what we call generally the Green Revolution. That's what happened over the 60s, where that huge increase in cereal, this is the cereal yields. That's the global, and then you see Near East and North Africa. Basically, what we could say in a nutshell is that the Green Revolution has somehow bypassed the region. It didn't really happen, so the productivity is still very low. Still, we are facing the challenge, and as we know, all working towards the Sustainable Development Goals and of 2030. So we have about, the agronomists all know that we have about 10 growing seasons or even less to reach those targets. And I can show you just one of those targets. There are about 126, I think, on the targets. One of them is 2.3 that says that basically we've got between now and 2030 to double the productivity of smallholder farming and also the income. So we've got to figure out how to do that over the 10 seasons in the region and without having the damage on the environment. That just gives you a very quick summary of what kind of challenges we'll be facing over the next decade. Now, if we focus on agriculture and smallholding farming on a small scale, it contributes about 14% of GDP, so globally in the whole region, but it employs about 40%, 38% of the active population in the region. It's also, you know, the rural areas hosting the majorities, basically, of the population in some countries. But the most important number here is that still today, about 80% of agricultural production is provided by small-scale farming, because the commercial large-scale is still in its beginning in the region. And that sets a very important target as well. So nearly 80% of agricultural land is small-holding farming. So that sets the conclusion is that we have to pay attention to the small scale. Now, this is called in the jargon the perfect storm. And I will show you again very quickly what it all means. If we summarize some of the development trends in the region, We talked about population dynamics, globalization, trade, demand for natural resources, and the links with the climate effect, and the fact that we say that it's a hot spot for climate. You look at the socioeconomic trends related to the environment, and actually all this comes as a package. Especially if you put the challenges all together, it gives you an idea of what the smallholder farmers are facing in the region. They are in the eye of that perfect storm. Now, and we've got to think whatever we do for smallholders, it's also for the whole region, and we have to find integrated solutions to face that. So today I've decided just to show the nitrogen. Last time I presented the story about phosphorus, potassium. Today I would just want to focus on nitrogen, the short story about nitrogen, because it's one of the key components for productivity of the crops, and also one of the key challenges in managing. So this is a sentence from Norman Borlaug, who was called the father of the Green Revolution. He said that chemical fertilizer is the fuel that has powered the Green Revolution forward thrust. And of course, we can ask the question now today. This was happening in the 60s and the 70s, but the question about the future, can we still rely on this paradigm, or do we have to find something else? And showing again a figure that I showed previously that is linking productivity. So if you look on top is in here, that's the productivity of maize. So you can see, and down is the fertilizer. And the story here is that, of course, productivity goes up when you add fertilizer, but there is a limit to that. And that limit is about, as you can see here, that's in the Midwest in the US, it's about 100, 120 kilograms per hectare. That's it. You don't have any more increases of productivity beyond that. So the question becomes here is what happens with all that excess of nitrogen that we might pour in the soil? And we can give some examples later on. You can see that the sustainable use of nitrogen and fertilizers in general is a key component for sustainability. So as you can see that some of the excess of nitrogen, it just goes lost basically in our body. So this is the global map of looking at nitrogen, and you can see that in some regions, of course, there is excess. In some other regions, like if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, there is deficiency. That's very clear, and that's basically facing the challenge of productivity. And the map doesn't show up very much the details in our region. And last time I presented another map, but today I just want to show some figures. 3 cases. We got extremes, basically, from Sudan. In the middle, we took Morocco, and the third is Egypt. And you can see the average, for instance, if you take the case of Sudan, is about 7 kilograms per hectare. So this is way below what is needed. If you take Morocco, it's about 27. These are the numbers from FAO database and looking at the whole evolution. And then if you come to Egypt, then you can see. So that's why I call here, there's a mixed picture between the deficiency, the average, and the exceeding. So where do we stand? Where is the middle? And what we should do and how to manage this? So this is one of the key messages from this whole talk, is basically to see where do we set the stage. Okay, so again, the short story about nitrogen is that this whole progress over the 20th century in terms of productivity has been possible thanks to the Green Revolution and the process of Haber-Bosch for the synthesis of nitrogen. So that has allowed the Green Revolution and all this huge increase in productivity, but it came with a price. That's what we could call the collateral damage. And if we look at the nitrogen cycle at the planetary level, that you can see that in blue, that's what they intended. We put nitrogen on the crops, and of course we produce forages for the animals and all that, and the farming systems. But a lot of it, all that gray and black arrows, are not intended, unintended. Nitrogen moves, it's very volatile, it goes to the atmosphere. Most of it ends up in the water, in the ecosystems, and it damages basically the biosphere. So that's the story again in a nutshell. How do we increase the efficiency without having those collateral damage? And this is again the key message. The studies that have been done recently looking at the planetary boundaries, what we call the planetary boundaries is basically that point of equilibrium that we can't go beyond. And you have it, for instance, for biodiversity in red over there on the top, but you also have it for the biogeochemical cycles of nitrogen and phosphorus. The story here is that most of the nitrogen and the phosphorus added into in the field crops ends up in the environment and ends up damaging the environment, and it's reaching a planetary boundaries. Basically, that's ringing a bell, a big one, saying, well, we've got to stop the management system on fertilizer, and we've got to find more sustainable ways for doing that. Now, looking into solutions, I think we've gone very quickly about the problems. By now, you're all, I think, on certain. We get. It's actually a lot of bad news if we start compiling all these challenges together. It becomes really huge. Now, is there any solutions? And that's the next stage that we're looking at. We're looking at soil fertility and sustainable agriculture and some of the initiatives. So we know that the future of food security will depend on sustainable agriculture and sustainable soil fertility management. And we do have the solutions, and that's the key message again here. FAO over the years, so this is part of our mandate and business for the last 4 or 5 decades more, and fertilizer and soil fertility has been a key component of all the policies and the work being done. Just to mention a few, and that's not restricted, the Save and Grow, the Sustainable Food and Agriculture, which puts recycling and soil fertility management in the center. It's always there. This is really a key component, and we have to look at the environmental as we look at the economic side, and we look at the social dimensions, that basically the triple dimensions that we look at in terms of sustainability. Now, in the region, more specifically, there's initiative on the Global Soil Partnership. We talked about that last time in the AFA meeting, and I think we had a chance to listen to the whole program. Here I'm just giving a very quick snapshot that we also working on this in the region. It was established in 2012 to enhance the collaboration between all the member countries, and we have an implementation plan. And also we're looking now in more into how to bring the soil partnership into the picture. So some of the summary recommendations, as you can see there, is to use the voluntary guidelines for sustainable soil management and to try to promote this with the countries across the regions, because if you remember that slide where I was showing Sudan, Morocco, and Egypt as examples, but actually we still have a mixed picture on the use of fertilizer. We've got to come to somehow a coherent master plan for the whole region and see how we're going to move towards sustainability. One element also is the International Code of Conduct for Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizer. This was endorsed by all the member states of FAO. So there are more than almost 200 countries, and they have implemented that, and it was endorsed last summer. Without reading through it all, but it's available. It's publicly available also online, and we can share it. But quickly, the story here is that we encourage cooperation between all stakeholders and looking at the whole fertilizer value chain. It leads production, use, and all that, and it has to come together at some stage. And also looking at the recycling and to reduce the environmental and soil health impacts, because this is becoming, as I showed already, a really key element into holding the equilibrium and the planetary boundaries. And also looking at the sustainable agricultural practices and the technologies and innovation. Here is another key word. I think today we all convinced that we have the technologies, we have the methodologies and the approaches, and innovation is moving very quickly in developing new solutions for the future. And it's about time that we adopt also that in our region to see how we can move towards sustainability. So integrated soil fertility management is the solution, and we have to endorse that. The other key component that englobes somehow an umbrella or an approach is agroecology. The world is also moving towards agroecology more and more, not only in the northern hemisphere, but also you look at Latin America, you look at examples of Asia, which is basically just bringing all these principles together. How can we increase the productivity while we recycle, and looking at the issues of sustainability, looking at efficiency, synergies, governance, and bringing all this together. And again, just without going into the details, we do have this working framework on agroecology, and I think it's about time, again, as a recommendation, that we embrace this approach in our region. And FAO is working toward that with all the member states in the region. Now, just end up by showing you a few examples, because beyond the concepts, I think we need to show tangible or practical solutions One of them is the biological nitrogen fixation. Just to give you again a very quick idea of what it does, this is very close topic to personally to my heart because I see the potential that it holds and also for the future. So to look at the industry fertilizer production today, I'm not sure about that number, but I think it's about 150, maybe 180 million tons. We need to check where it is in 2020. But of course, as we all know, that comes with a huge energetic cost, as we've seen already in the first paper. That's all related to oil, and it also has environmental price, as we said, on nitrogen and also the greenhouse effect. On the other hand, the biological nitrogen fixation, which is basically produced by Mother Earth for free, it gives about 200 million tons per year. Net, this potential, how to use it, how to manage it in the ecosystems. And I think this is really a key solution for the future. Now, the problem, of course, when you get plants like the pulses, most of the pulses like a faba bean or a chickpea, or a lentil, all of them, they have that ability to fix the nitrogen from the soil, from the atmosphere. But the problem when you add nitrogen, too much nitrate in the soil, it inhibits that process. So this is a key question for our future, is also to see how we can better use that potential for nitrogen. Another example or another success story that I picked up recently from IRI, the International Rice Research Institute, where I used to work before on rice. So this is basically, IRI is working with the rice farming systems across Asia. This is one of the bread baskets for the whole world. How can we, when you look at rice production in China, in Cambodia, in Myanmar, here, it eats and it uses a lot of nitrogen. And a lot of that nitrogen, as we said, goes into the biosphere. So these are examples, for example, showing how IRI is trying to implement some of the solutions, innovations that are using apps, like this lady here called Sansan, is a farmer from Myanmar, and basically just giving technology and apps by using smartphones to do the site-specific nitrogen management. IRI has been working on this from the 60s on the site-specific nitrogen, but they didn't have always the tools to reach the farmers because you need extension, and extension in the farming system sometimes collapse. Now we have new solutions with the digital extension services, and I think this is really a great opportunity for our region as well, and we do have also examples in the region moving into digital extension. FAO is working on this aspect. Just to show you examples. Now last, I want to finish by this good sign also, with some good news from the fertilizer industry. The last meeting, I'm sure some of you have been there, the high-level Forum on Sustainable Plant Nutrition, held in Paris last November, is basically coming with the solution. I think it came as a paradigm shift in the thinking towards sustainability. So basically this is now a wake-up call for the fertilizer industry. How can we move into better management systems of the nitrogen, including the use and the production? And I'm just putting there extracts from some of the feedback on that. One is from the climate change experts in the CGIAR, saying basically that it's fantastic to see the fertilizer industry getting ahead of the game in reducing greenhouse gas emission. This is news, I think, and this is really good news to see that move. The other one is the head of the farmer organizations, the World Farm Organizations, again pointing to what we said about the potential of digital innovation. And with this good news, I would like to reach out now the final conclusions. I'm not going to read all of them, but I think the most obvious here is that we need to take care of the soil, and we need to develop, and we have the tools and the innovation and all the tools necessary to take care of the soil and the fertilizer and bring a rational management of the whole system and bring in agroecology in the picture. So I'm not going to the whole details. And as I said, innovation is key, so I also invite you to join us next month in Riyadh, where we're holding the innovation in agri-food systems in Saudi Arabia in next month, which will tackle most of these issues and basically focusing on what's innovation and how innovation can contribute in bringing the sustainability towards the sustainable development goals. And with that, thank you.